Hello, and welcome back to episode 12 of season 2 of Unlimited Opinions. I'm Adam Bishop.
I'm Mark Bishop.
And of course, we are still reading Jake Jackson's Myths and Legends, documenting mythologies from around the world. Of course, we are in the last section of Chinese mythology here, with stories of the Crane Maiden and other fables.
Why do you think the Chinese dragons breathe clouds and not fire? Or why do you think the dragons of, like, I guess it'd be English mythology?
Western, really.
Western mythology, they breathe fire.
Well, I think it's a difference between, if it's a threat or an ally, really. Because, Chinese dragons are more spiritual. Sometimes they're gods. They're very deity-like. And so they're kind of soul-ish, I guess.
Right. But it's kind of interesting that they both breathe something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is
supposed
interesting.
To claw you or eat you.
I'm sure they could.
Well, yeah, but
I'm sure they have.
I think their unique feature of a dragon is, in the Western world, is the breathing fire. So they're a dragon rather than just a big lizard.
Well, they're depicted very, very differently.
True.
As opposed to Western versus Eastern, because the classic Eastern style dragon, very long,
right, like a snake.
Slender, like a snake with arms, basically, and big teeth.
Yeah.
And then the typical Western dragon, the wings and the claws and everything.
By the way, we failed to watch the movie with the best Chinese dragon in it.
Oh, we did.
We'll do that next time.
Next time, yeah.
We gotta make a list.
We should. Really should.
We'll have a seminal movie marathon. Movies that you must watch.
All right.
That's one of them.
Speaking of movies, we haven't even started talking about, the myths yet, but we watched the first part of Get Back, the Beatles documentary, recently, and this will really date this episode.
What does that have to do with mythology?
It doesn't. It's just letting the people know. It's very good, and I recommend it.
Yes.
Yeah,
it was pretty good.
It's very good. Directed by Peter Jackson.
It's a little long in the sense that there's no apparent storyline to it. You have to infer, what's going on a lot of times.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just what happened, really.
Right.
It's just...
right. But I was expecting there to be little breakouts where it'll be like Paul talking about what he was thinking or what he is doing.
I think that was kind of the point of this one, though, because, in the past documentaries made with this same footage, it was always putting a story over it.
Right.
And now it's just like, this is what actually happened. Here you go.
It's interesting. We just did section 1 of it. And
yes. Yeah. It's very fascinating. Very good.
Can something be very fascinating, or is it just fascinating?
I think it'd be very fascinating. I think something can be slightly fascinating.
Really?
Yeah.
How on earth can be slightly fascinating?
Like if somebody tells an interesting story about a very boring topic. Like here's how
then it's fascinating. There's no levels of fascinating.
I think there's levels of fascinating.
The fascinating is a peak.
It's not.
There's interesting.
Oh my god.
There you can't qualify fascinating. It's like qualifying goodness.
Well, you can qualify goodness.
How do you do that?
There are things that are more good than other things.
More good?
Yeah.
It's either good or it's not good.
No, it's not.
Or I guess you could say it's great.
Yeah, there's good. We have good, better, and best. Those are like three. It's absolutely qualifying.
All right, you've refuted that argument very effectively.
Yeah.
Finally came around to you. You were stunned. It's like I hit you with a stun stick. You're like, wait a second, there's good, better, and best. All right. Now, how about how Monkey became immortal?
Yes, the first actual story, getting into the topic. So Monkey was, of course, as you do, born from a stone egg, and he led his tribe of monkeys to a safe and pleasant life. But Monkey knew that they still had death to fear, and so he set out to find immortality. Monkey then found a holy man, who's named Master Subodhi, who taught Monkey for 20 years, teaching him to change shape as he pleased and to travel thousands of miles in a single leap, and he taught him the path to eternal life. Monkey then returned home, conquering a demon that had taken control there, and then he realized that he needed a proper weapon in case threats came about again, and so he seized the iron pillar of the Dragon King of the Eastern Sea, which could change from an 8-foot-tall staff for fighting to a tiny needle that he could keep behind his ear. 2 men then later came for Monkey with a death warrant from Lord Yama, the ruler of the underworld, but Monkey beat the men with his staff, charging straight into the underworld himself. Once there, he demanded to see the register of the dead, and then he found the names in this big book of him and his tribe, and he tore their names from the book, and when he returned home, his tribe did not believe him. The Jade Emperor, the most powerful god, saw all the trouble that Monkey was making, and so he offered him the position of Master of the Heavenly Stables, which Monkey soon realized was a useless position intended to tame him, and so he stormed home back from the heavens.
You know, Monkey started out as a pretty, I thought, well, this is a pretty heroic character, you know, leading his people very well, and then defending them and driving off the bad person, and then even going into the underworld and tearing their name from the Book of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of heroic.
Yeah.
Even though a little violent, beating up everybody along the way with the staff.
Yeah.
And then here, they're like, okay, they're going to reward him, and they're like, oh, here it comes.
Yep, he's not doing too great.
The story's going to turn.
So unable to capture Monkey again, the Jade Emperor gave him the actual position of superintendent of the Heavenly Peach Garden to appease Monkey, but then Monkey ignored the order to not touch any of the peaches that granted immortality, and he devoured a large number of them. Later, furious that he hadn't been invited to the Feast of Peaches, Monkey put all the guests at the feast under a sleeping spell, eating all the food and drinking all the wine there, then staggering drunkenly into the palace of Lao Chun, eating all the seeds of immortality that were kept there. The gods were furious and unable to defeat him until Erlang, the Jade Emperor's nephew, Lao Chun, and the celestial dog Tian Kao chained him and threw him into Lao Chun's furnace, in which the seeds of immortality were made, in order to attempt to kill Monkey. However, Monkey promptly burst out stronger than ever, and then proclaimed himself ruler of the universe. After doing so, Buddha then appeared to him, saying that if Monkey could leap from his hand, he would be named ruler of the universe. Monkey laughed, jumping in 2 bounds to the 5 red pillars that mark the end of the universe, there writing his name on one of the pillars and jumping back to Buddha's hand. He bragged about his achievement, but Buddha then showed Monkey his fingers, on which Monkey's name was written, and he realized that the 5 pillars were simply Buddha's fingers, and he never left his hand, for the entire universe is in Buddha's hand. Monkey tried to run in fear, but Buddha imprisoned him in a great mountain, saying he will only be freed when he repents and someone intercedes for him.
I have 2 thoughts.
Really?
One is, I wonder if Monkey's still under the mountain.
Probably.
I don't know. You think he's repented?
I don't think so.
And I think it's a story. Another thought was, you know, when he's king of the other monkeys, like this description where he says their way of life was extremely pleasant. They had all they needed to eat and drink and were safe from enemies. Yet Monkey was not content.
Yes.
And then it's like, oh, okay, this is gonna be one of those stories.
Yep.
About the quest for power and immortality, then ended up buried under a mountain.
I really like the section about Buddha. I think that's a really neat sort of picture there.
Yeah.
You know, he tries to leap from his hand, but everything is essentially in his hand.
Right.
It's kind of like, you know, he himself is outside of the universe, and no matter what you do, you're still within the bounds of what is, you know, within Buddha's hand.
Right. It's trying to get away from God.
Exactly.
Well, if you escape me, you know, you win.
Yeah.
You can't get away from the universe.
Yes, very much so.
I love that story.
Yeah, I really like that story very, very much. Probably one of my favorites from the Chinese mythology.
I think it was the most awesomely fascinating story.
You aren't going to let this go, are you?
Red.
My God. The next story, The Pair of Fools. It's about us.
Yes. I was going to say something else, but that's good.
Okay. So one day, a poor villager found, and his name was Lin, he found 10 pieces of silver, but he had no place to hide them in his very small mud hut. So he hollowed out a cavity in the wall, placing the silver inside and then covering the hole with more mud. Worried that someone would find all of these silver pieces, he then wrote on the wall that there are no silver pieces hidden in this wall, and then left for work. His neighbor...
That'll do it.
Yes, of course. Nobody's going to look there. His neighbor Juan then came to look for Lin, and then seeing the message, he began to think, you know, if there were no silver pieces in the wall, why would he write the message? And so he attacked the wall with vigor and stole the silver. He then returned home and was worried that he'd be found out and someone would accuse him of stealing the silver, so he wrote in his own wall that I, Juan, an honest man, did not steal the 10 silver pieces from the hole on the wall of Lin's hut.
I don't think that worked.
No, I don't think so. That's how the story ends, but I think we're left to assume that it did not work out for him.
But you know what? Lin was pretty stupid. He might not have figured that out.
Yeah, I guess that's true.
Somebody would have told him.
Yeah, somebody probably. Very unfortunate for Lin.
Yeah.
I guess we have nothing else to say about that one. That's a good story. I don't know. I like that story. It's a good story.
It's like a telltale heart.
Yes.
Yeah. The guilty heart.
Edgar Allan Poe.
I didn't do it.
I think I've read that before.
What, the Telltale
Yeah,
Heart?
I think
Yeah,
so.
should've
A long time ago.
been short. Isn't that Edgar
Edgar Allan Poe, yeah.
Yeah, it's great.
Mhm.
The thumping of the heart.
Yeah, and the
underneath
Raven, yeah. I think I read that one.
underneath
The floorboards.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm,
He murdered somebody.
yes. The next story is a very strange one, the silkworm. So it starts off with a man being called to fight in the war, and so he left his family, who missed him terribly, and became more and more certain that he would never return as the weeks passed.
And this had so many twists and turns I did not anticipate.
Yes, this one was very strange.
Neat story.
Yes. His daughter found solace in caring for her family's horse. And one day, while she was grooming the horse, she swore that if anyone could bring her father home, she would marry him on the spot, no matter what his condition was. The horse then broke out of the stable, running to the front lines, and returning a few days later with the father. All the family were overjoyed besides the daughter, and as time went on, the father noticed that the horse was severely depressed except when his daughter was near, and so he got her to reveal the oath that she had said in front of the horse. The father then forbade her to see the horse ever again, and it gradually wasted away until the father knew that he had to kill it, and so he did so, hanging its hide in the sun outside. His daughter rejoiced, as she believed that she was free from the oath that she had sworn, but as she passed by the hide, it wrapped itself around her, spinning faster and faster until she was carried away like a small tornado. Her father then followed it to where it stopped, finding there only a single worm, and that was all that was left of his daughter, and so he took it back home, and his wife cared for it, and it began producing thread that they called silk, which became popular throughout China.
Throughout the world, eventually.
Throughout the world, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I did not anticipate any of that at all.
Right.
Like, I could kind of see where it was going, when she swore the oath in front of the horse. I'm like, okay, well, that's going to happen.
Right.
Was not expecting her to be tornadoed away and turned into a worm.
Right. I was expecting like a Frog and a Prince story.
Yeah.
I thought she'd kiss him and boop, he'd be a handsome young man. No, that's not how the Chinese legends
Nope.
go.
She got carried away and turned into a worm. It's probably one of the worst things that can happen to you.
Yeah?
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of something that could be worse. That's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad.
I think it's worse than being buried under a mountain.
Maybe. Because at least, you're still you.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're just a
Hugh?
worm.
You're Hugh.
Oh my god, we're not doing this again.
I'm not Hugh. I'm Mark.
Oh my god.
You are you. I am me.
The next story is that of the Crane Maiden. And this centers around Tian Kunlun, who was a bachelor, and his elderly mother wanted to see him married before she died.
Which is probably partially explains why he is still a bachelor, because if he had an ugly mother, he's probably not fair eyes either.
I guess, you have a point.
It's important to see those details, Ed.
And so he went out in search for a wife, coming to a pool of clear water, seeing there 3 beautiful maidens whose clothes were on the shore. He stared at them for a while, but then sneezed, causing them to turn into cranes, 2 of them picking up their clothes and flying away, but Tian grabbed the third's clothes before she could. She then revealed that they were daughters of the high god, and they needed their clothes to fly back up to heaven, and she would gladly marry him if he returned her clothes. Tian initially accepted this deal, but he was soon afraid that she would fly away as soon as he gave her the clothes, and so he kept the clothes, and the maiden followed him home unwillingly. Tian's mother rejoiced that he was to marry this beautiful maiden, and they had a wedding and a son that they named Tian Zheng, whom they both loved. Tian was then called away to fight in the war, and so he told his mother to hide his wife's clothes. But then, when the maiden asked to just see the clothes very briefly, Tian's mother relented, and so she showed her the clothes, and the maiden quickly seized them and flew away. When Tian returned, he forgave his mother, but his son was inconsolable and would always search for her, until one day an old man directed him to go to the pool where there would be 3 maidens. He told him that the one maiden who ignored him would be his mother. And so sure enough, Tian Zhang went to the pool and saw the 3 maidens, and one turned away from him, unable to look at him. And so he ran to her, and she then embraced him, saying to him, crying to him and calling him her son. After some time, her sisters knew that it was time to go back up to the heavens, and they offered to bring the child with them to heaven. She did so, and the high god adored his grandson, and later sent him back to earth with 8 books that contained all knowledge. On returning, Tian Zhang found that 20 years had passed, and he became a renowned scholar and judge, and his father, who had become a hermit in those 20 years, learned of his son's fame and was content.
I don't know why he was content, but I guess you're always happy that your children do well.
Yeah, I mean, it's been 20 years, and so he's probably worried this entire time that his son had just disappeared or died, and then he hears that he's actually a really famous and successful scholar.
I would think that would draw you out of hermithood, though.
You'd think.
Make a journey, but he's thousands of miles away, so he just couldn't possibly make it back.
Yeah, it's kind of said he went out to live in the mountains very far away, and so.
In his sorrow.
An interesting story. This actually happens again. We'll see in a later story with these three maidens and the clothes by the water. It's interesting that that's kind of, the key thing that causes all of this to happen. It ends up weirdly sweet and wholesome with kind of a creepy beginning.
Yeah, creepy, somewhat rapist type.
Yeah.
You're now my prisoner. You must bear me.
Yeah, little creepy.
She came unwillingly. If he would have taken her clothes and she's like, well, you give me my clothes back, I'll marry you. Oh, okay, I'll take that deal.
The next story is that of the cuckoo, and it centers around a god named Wang who visited Earth regularly and loved it. And one time when he was visiting the Earth, he met an immortal living in the kingdom of Shu, and they married, becoming king and queen of Shu. Wang used all of his powers to help the people of Shu, but there was one problem that he could not solve. Every year, the river Yangtze would flood and destroy the crops of the kingdom. One day, a corpse was found floating upstream against the current, and when it was retrieved, it came to life, asking to see the king of the land.
That's probably that's a bad sign.
Yeah, you probably...
Two bad signs. One, floating upstream, and second, it came to life. It kind of works out okay, I guess.
Yes. So Wang spoke to him, impressed with his knowledge, and the man said that he came from the kingdom of Chu down south, where they controlled the floods easily. Wang then appointed him minister of the river, and the man soon found the issue, as upstream the flow to the north grew every year with the melting of the ice, and it was restricted in the flow of some valleys, and so he instructed engineers to bore channels through the rocks, increasing the water flow, causing Shu to be safe from floods. Wang was impressed and realized that this intelligent man would be a better king than him, and so he stepped down and graciously offered this man the kingship and then lived in isolation. However, rumors soon spread that Wang had seduced the man's wife and gave him the kingship to keep him quiet, and was afterwards banished. And when Wang heard this, he died broken-hearted, and the gods turned his spirit into a cuckoo, whose mournful cry still sounds out Wang's grief for leaving the people that he loved.
It's a sad story.
That is a very sad story, very unfortunate.
And it's like a very rare story indeed, where a ruler steps aside for what he perceives to be a better man for the people.
It's interesting that there's really no villain either. There's nothing that really causes this to happen. It's just the people assumed that it was this way, and his life was kind of ruined after that.
Almost unbelievable that a king would give up the throne. Kind of like how I presume there's something untowards going on with Pope Benedict resigning.
Yes, you've mentioned this before.
Doesn't make sense.
Yes.
I mean, he lives a life of luxury anyway. Why retire from a part-time job?
That's Thank you for that.
But that may have caused it, and like you said, there's like no bad person, and
nobody.
There's really no bad thing that happens. It's just that's why the cuckoo makes a mournful cry in China.
Yes. Very sad, very unfortunate. Sometimes bad things just happen, even if you're a very good person, I guess is kind of the message here. I guess, yeah.
I mean, it didn't... Yeah.
Yeah.
True.
Yes. The next story is about the Wooden Bridge Inn. So a traveling merchant named Chow came to a strange place with his tiring donkey, and he asked a farmer where he could stay for the night and buy a new donkey. The farmer responded that everyone stayed at the Wooden Bridge Inn, which was run by a woman named Third Lady.
Every stranger,
yes. Every stranger. Yes, that's very important.
You're not going to allow your family members to stay.
No, you will not.
Unless you don't like them.
Yes, and Third Lady sold donkeys, but the farmer was very furtive about where she got the donkeys. So coming to the inn, Chow joined the 6 or 7 other guests, and Third Lady treated them well, supplying wine until they were all drunk besides Chow, who didn't drink. The others then fell into a drunken slumber, and Chow was instructed to go to a bed, which was hidden behind a partition. And so he laid somewhat uneasily that night and was startled awake by a loud rumbling. So Chow looked out and saw Third Lady pulling a wooden trunk out in her room. From this, she pulled out a little wooden man, ox, and plow and sprinkled water on them, who then came to life, plowing the floor and growing wheat, which they then gave to Third Lady, who made cakes from it. The next morning, Third Lady offered all of the guests one of these cakes, but Chow was very wary about these, seeing how she got them, and so did not eat his, but hid it in his sleeve. And as he left out the door, he turned and saw all of the other guests turned into donkeys. He then returned the next night, stopping to buy some other exactly similar cakes in town, and he then offered some of them to Third Lady, specifically giving her the one that he had taken from her the previous morning. And so, taking one bite from it, she herself turned into a donkey. Chow then burned her wooden figures, and then used his new donkey for 5 years, until an old man one day saw it and came up to it, recognizing it as Third Lady, and sliced its stomach open, out of which fell Third Lady, who ran away, never to be seen again.
Well, and you skipped that this guy allowed her to be free.
Yes.
After 5 years of loyal service. And then the guy sliced the belly. I was like, well, there's this going. And then out she pops, and then she goes off into the woods, never to be seen again.
It makes you kind of wonder if all those other people are still just kind of like in those donkeys, and if you like slice their stomachs, they'd all be free again.
Yeah, I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. It kind of sucks if that's how that works, and they're just, stuck there and nobody's freed them.
Right. This story may have caused a lot of donkey killings.
Yeah, I guess so.
Back in the day.
I guess so.
My Uncle John, I haven't seen him in years. He might be in that donkey. No, not this one. That's a real donkey.
Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah, and I don't know who would have conceived of such a plot.
Yeah, I don't know.
This thing and the growing of the wooden wheat and the baking of the stuff.
I'm
Crazy.
guessing it's, several stories and tales kind of mashed together again.
I guess.
This is
very, very creative.
very varied beliefs, I guess. About, little wooden figures.
Well, the moral is don't get drunk at the inn.
Yes,
Don't
that's true.
Cakes.
Yeah, free cakes, never good. Never good. The next story is The Three Precious Packets. And so, in the winter, a poor law student named Niu was traveling to take his law examinations in the capital city, and he stayed at a small inn and could only order a small bowl of noodles and some wine, due to his low budget, and he sat by the fire. A poor old man then entered, and Niu immediately offered a seat without the man even asking, and then later insisted that the man share his food and his bed that night, all of which the man graciously accepted. The next morning, the man revealed himself to be a messenger from the underworld, and he gave Niu 3 packets, telling him to open them when all seemed hopeless. Niu then continued on to the city, which was very expensive, and over time he ran out of his money completely. And so, seeing no way to make more money, he opened a packet, which contained a message telling him to sit outside the Bodhi temple. After some time, a monk came out, and Niu told him that he was the nephew of the magistrate of Qin Yang, who the monk was very shocked to hear, saying that he was a great benefactor of the temple, and he had left 3,000 strings of coins there, which the monk then gave to Niu. Niu was now very wealthy, but he still could not pass the examinations, no matter how hard he tried, and so he opened another packet, which told him to eat in Shu's restaurant. And so Niu, of course, did so, and as he was sitting in the restaurant, he overheard a conversation between 2 of the writers of the test, who discussed all of the problems that would be on the test, and Niu wrote these down and passed with flying colors, immediately becoming a wise, kind, and fair magistrate. Years later, Niu was struck by an illness that no doctor could cure, and so he opened the last packet, which told him to simply write his will, and Niu did so, content with the good life that he had lived.
Yeah. Again, I was surprised by that last turn. I kind of chuckled out loud.
Yeah.
Like, go write your will. Oh, jeez. All right. But he was content, and he had lived a good life.
He had lived a very good life.
And pretty much got everything that he wanted. He wanted to pass the exam. He wanted to eat enough food to study, and then he needed to pass the exam, and then he became a wealthy magistrate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a pretty good life.
Good for him. Good for Niu.
Packets.
Yes.
So because he was kind to the starving beggar,
Mm-hmm.
all worked out for him.
Yeah.
I don't see these stories that often where everything just kind of works out.
Yeah.
Although in this one, we were kind of I was expecting a heal,
Mm-hmm.
a healing thing that lived forever or whatever. Nope. Write your
Nope.
will. Well, okay, I better be prepared. It's good lawyerly advice. It's a
Yes.
lawyer's fable. Getting everybody to come in and make their estate plan.
The next story is the Haunted Pavilion. So a student was walking south of Anyang, and he asked a woman if there was an inn nearby, and she said, of course, that there was none in this very small town, and so he said that he would sleep in a pavilion that he had passed on the road. The woman turned white, saying that the pavilion was haunted, but he went anyway, reading a book by a lamp all night and not sleeping at all. I'm struggling to turn the page of my notebook. So some time passed, and a man in black approached and called for the master of the pavilion, asking who was in the pavilion, and a voice from behind the student replied that a student was there who was not yet asleep, and the man in black left. A man in a red hat then approached and did the same, receiving the same response from the mysterious voice. As the man left, the student then snuck out of the front door, and then did the same as the other two had done, calling for the master and receiving the same response. He then asked who had approached before him, and the voice answered that the black swine of the north and the red cock of the west were the two that had come before, and that he himself was the old scorpion. The student then went back inside, remaining awake and alive all night to the villagers' surprise. He then said that he would remove the curse, first killing a scorpion that was hidden inside the building, and then asking where a rooster and a pig were nearby, and killed them both. And from then on, no one was disturbed in the pavilion. So he tricked the spirits into revealing who they were.
I guess the only reason why he survived those because he was studying all night.
Yes. It's a message to study.
Yes. Those with knowledge.
It's also interesting.
Saved.
Also interesting, kind of like I think there's something to say about like the role of names here. You know, as soon as you name the spirit, you name the evil or something, you can find out what it is and get it out. You know, that's a big thing in a lot of mythologies, how important your name is. It's, you know, very central to who you are, and it's kind of the key to protecting yourself, essentially.
Is not telling your name?
Not telling your name. Or
like Rumpelstiltskin?
Like Rumpelstiltskin, yes. Yes, exactly. It's a big thing in actually Celtic myths that we didn't hear kind of in this section. But with kind of fairies that can, like, if you tell them your name, you essentially become their servant because they have they have power over you now that they have your name. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of the same thing here. The next story is the Dragon's Pearl. And so a mother and a son lived in Shu, and they made a living selling grass that the boy gathered every day. And as the earth grew brown due to a lack of rain, he had to walk farther and farther for fresh grass, eventually finding the most verdant grass he had ever seen very far from his home. Verdant, yes.
Go ahead.
Okay. Thanks for your input. So they sold this grass for a handsome price, and the boy returned to the same spot, finding the grass fully grown already. They harvested it and sold it day after day. The boy, then thinking that this was magic grass, should surely grow back home, and so he dug up some of it, and as he was digging it up, he found a large pearl amidst the grass, and he gave it to his mother, who placed it in a rice jar for safekeeping. The next day, the boy found that the grass was completely dead, but the jar was full to the brim with rice, and they realized it was a very magic pearl, soon using it to multiply their money. So news of this magic pearl soon spread, and soon an angry crowd came to the son, demanding to have the pearl, and the boy swallowed it, afraid of what the crowd would do. He soon realized this was a mistake, as he was filled with a burning thirst, and drank all of the river Min, and he soon grew into a scaly dragon, his mother still clinging to his legs. She called out to him as a storm grew and replenished the river, and he looked back at her with each time that she cried, before disappearing in the river forever. And the banks of the river Min are still known as the Looking Back at Mother Banks. Another just kind of sad story where bad things happen in the end.
Well, I mean, there's a lesson that any hippie would agree with, is that you never dig up the magic grass.
That was a terrible joke.
A little marijuana humor there.
Yeah, that was good. That was very good.
Well, they got greedy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he wouldn't just leave it well enough alone and just have a comfortable life harvesting the grass. Mm-hmm. And then once they realized, they can make money or make food, then they made money, and they just got bigger and bigger. And
they could have left it just at food, just putting it with their food.
Or been, moderate about it, or share it with the entire village.
Yeah, because if you start printing money like that, people are going to be very confused about where it comes from.
We want the printing press too.
Yeah, exactly. The next story is The Dragon King's Daughter. This is about a student named Liu Yi, who came across a beautiful sobbing girl near a riverbank, and he asked if he could help her. And she then revealed that her father was the Dragon King of Lake Dongting, and she was married to the son of the god of the Jing River, who treats her terribly, and she asked him to take a message to her father for his help. He agreed, and she gave him a sash, telling him to wrap it around a tangerine tree near the lake and knock 3 times on the tree to be brought to the king's palace. Thank you for the sound effects. And he did so. And as he did so, the waves parted, and a guide came to him, blindfolding him and bringing him to a palace of precious stones wherein sat the Dragon King. He explained the situation, and the king thanked him. But as he explained this, a terrible noise sounded out, and a huge red dragon tore through the room, leaving quickly, and the king explained that was his brother Qian Tang, who would do anything for his niece. The king apologized for this disturbance, giving Liu food and wine, and a short time later, a procession entered the palace, in which, to Liu's surprise, was the young princess, who warmly thanked him. So, a short time after, a handsome young man entered, revealing himself to be Qian Tang, and when asked of the god of the river Jing, he said, "It was nothing. I slew 600,000 of his men and destroyed 200 square miles of his land, and the battle was as good as won." The king responded, "And what of my daughter's erstwhile husband?" "I ate him," replied Qian Tang casually, and the conversation was over.
Yeah.
He's very blunt about that.
Yes. Don't mess with that dude.
A great feast was held, and a drunk Qian Tang then advised Liu to marry the girl, but Liu politely declined, worried that he would change his mind when sober, and he returned home, secretly still longing for the princess. Time passed, and he married 2 different women over time, both of which died of fever, and he then had a 3rd wife, with whom he raised a large family, and over time he realized that she looked more and more like the princess. And so, confronting her about this, she did reveal herself to be the princess, and they then took up residence with the Dragon King and Queen in Qiantang in their immortal home beneath the waves. Another story that works out well.
Yeah, I guess he's twice widowed.
Yeah,
but that was just nature,
Mm-hmm.
It seems like
well, it kind of says, he felt like he had to really, he couldn't be a bachelor forever, even though he still loved this girl.
And I guess maybe one of the lessons would be, when you love somebody, tell them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, even if they have a crazy red dragon for an uncle.
Well, because what the red dragon uncle was saying is marry her,
Mm-hmm.
which is different than, asking her, I guess.
I guess that's true.
But it worked. Like I said, it worked out in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you got the girl in the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Kind of sweet.
It was sweet. The next story is The Herdsman and the Weaver Girl. So a weaver girl lived in heaven, spinning the most beautiful garments for all of the gods, and the high god realized that she worked too hard, and so sent her down to earth for a break, choosing a husband for her, a herdsman named Chen Li.
By the way, it seemed like he had not an easy life.
No.
And so this doesn't seem like quite a vacation that the god was thinking would be.
It really doesn't.
But it turned out it was for her.
The reason Chen Li had not a very easy life was because his parents had died, and so all of their property was left to their sons, and his brothers took all of the good land and the good property. And so he owned only an old ox and very barren land, but he never complained, working hard all the time, and only saying aloud once that he wished for a wife. Mm-hmm. To his surprise, the ox that was in his presence looked at him, for it was really the ox of the stars, sent down to earth, and he told him to go to a clear pool nearby where some maidens were bathing and to steal one of their clothes.
Again with the stealing of clothes.
This is very, very unfortunate. Of course, this would compel her to marry him by custom. He did so, taking the weaver's clothes, for these 3 maidens were from heaven, and the one that he stole was the weaver's. And so he married her and had children. But the high god realized that she was so happy that she would never return to heaven, and so he sent 2 of his soldiers to carry her back up. Chen Li was horrified by this, and his ox told them that when he died, Chen Li should take his hide and wrap it around himself, allowing him to fly up to heaven. So the ox then promptly died at Chen Li's feet, and so Chen Li took the hide and so took his daughter and son in each arm and floated up to heaven. However, the high god threw down his white silk scarf, forming a river between the 2 lovers that could not be crossed. But he soon realized that the grief of the weaver was so great, and so on the 7th day of the 7th month of each year, all the magpies in the world would form a bridge over the river, allowing the family to reunite. Chen Li and the weaver spent so much time in the sky that they gradually became stars, and the scarf is still seen today as the Milky Way. So, yeah, I don't know what the deal is with these three maidens, bathing in the pool. I guess that's just, a common theme, a common known occurrence. I don't know. It's very strange that just lets you marry somebody if you steal their clothes. Although this time, she did seem very much more willing.
Well, she
than the last
made
one.
the offer.
Yes.
So she said, well, first he steals the clothes, which is not nice. And then she said, well, if you give me the clothes, I'll gladly marry you. And then he gives it back to her, and she voluntarily and happily goes off.
This one was a little better.
Yeah.
Than the previous things. Yes, a little bit.
A little bit more like It's a Wonderful Life.
Yes.
Where
I was thinking the same thing.
Was that right?
Yes.
Yeah, where there's a scene where after they fall in the pool and they're walking home and she's in a robe and then she runs away but accidentally leaves the robe behind and she's in a bush.
Yes.
So he didn't steal the clothes, but
it's a very good movie, which I, as I said, watched for the first time the other day.
Yeah,
I've never seen it before.
Done.
Yes, we did.
Yes.
We did. Not what we intended to watch, but yes.
Why?
Well, there were so many other movies that you said I should watch.
That
was one of them. Yes.
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah. It's I think it's a brilliant story about the value of the everyman, the any man.
Yeah.
If any person who works hard and tries to help their community, is the hero of that story. Really, I mean, that character, Jimmy Stewart's character, of course, did more and was in a position to do more for the community, but mostly because he chose to. He made self-sacrificing decisions that helped the entire community out of a sense of obligation, and mostly almost unwilling obligation.
Yeah,
like it certainly didn't want to.
But he knew it was the right thing to do.
Right, he did his duty.
As he kind of sees later on, he was the one thing kind of helping all of the people. Not to spoil the movie. And if anybody hasn't seen It's a Wonderful Life from like 1940 something.
Yeah, probably.
In 1940s, yeah. It's a great movie. Very good movie.
Very good.
The last story is about you, the foolish old man in the mountain. This one actually very much reminded me of you.
Really?
Yes. Very, very much so. This is the last story in the Chinese myths.
I did not see me in this, but go ahead.
An old man named Yu Gong lived in the mountains, and every day he had to climb 2 peaks to return home, and he hated these peaks intensely. One day he called all of his family together, proclaiming that they would move the entire mountains to the shores of the Great Lake, and so they excavated mounds of earth, but still the peaks seemed no smaller. A wise man saw this and called it nonsense, and told him to stop, but Yu Gong said, "Stop now. Don't be absurd. When I die, my sons will carry on the work, and their sons after them. The work will continue on down the generations until the great task is finished. You really are no wiser than my youngest nephew." And the wise man kept silent, as he had no answer to this. And so a god overheard this conversation, going then to the high god to warn him of Yu Gong's ambition. But the high god was impressed, and sent 2 giants to help. And they took the mountains to Yongnan in the south and Shuodong in the east. And the old man lived the rest of his life without having to climb over the peaks.
Why does this make you think of me, of all people?
Because every time the old man went anywhere, he had to cross the 2 peaks, and he hated them with all his soul for always exhausting them. I feel like that is exactly the type of thing that would make you mad. These mountains are in my way. I need to move them.
Well, you probably see me driving in traffic. That's probably
yes.
Get these people out of my way.
Exactly.
I'm trying to get somewhere.
Yes. That was a good story. I like that story. Very, very short and simple, but it was a good story.
Yeah. Persistence
Yes,
paid
persistent.
off.
Exactly.
And that he's able to enjoy life without having to go up and down the mountains.
Yes, well, that was it for Chinese myths and legends. What do you think of Chinese mythology overall? Just brief summary.
Surprising. A lot of twists and turns. A lot of interesting morality tales. And unexpected morality tales.
Yeah.
But certainly a focus on doing your duty and studying and knowledge and scholastic efforts. I thought that was a lot of what I got out of it.
Yeah.
What about you?
I really agree. I really like the focus on, sort of learning everything. It's a lot of times things aren't just given to people. I mean, occasionally they are, and this isn't any myth, but a lot of the time it's, here's this thing that you can learn from.
Yeah.
And, you can find it out for yourself. I've provided you the materials, but you actually have to do the work yourself.
Yeah, it's not like just a magic sword will kill all your enemies.
Mm-hmm. Although there is some of that in there.
But not just that.
Mm-hmm.
There's... Yeah, I agree. I think it's pretty
very,
neat.
very interesting.
Neat stories and stuff I've never heard before, so it was all new to me.
Well, next week for our listeners, not next week for us, but we'll be looking at classical Greek mythology for the first time, so a bit more familiar tales probably for us. But yeah.
Certainly for you, I'd have to remember all of them. I've forgotten everything.
Yes. Well, that's something to look forward to next week.
Yes.
Any other closing thoughts?
No.
All right. Well, this has been episode 12 of season 2 of Unlimited Opinions. I've been Adam Bishop.
I'm still Mark Bishop.
It was a good episode. I'm glad we got that done.
That was very fascinating.
Now I get to... Oh, God. It was. There's levels of fascinating. There are.
There's one level.
Now I get to go back up to Kirksville.
Yeah, it's a nice short drive.
4 hours.
Very scenic.
It's not.
In the beginning of winter when everything's dead.
Everything's dead, yeah.